Oh, you thought Atlanta nightlife was all champagne showers and VIP selfies. Think again. Because last night, in a club so exclusive, even the velvet rope needed ID. Things didn't just pop off, they detonated. We're talking bass, chaos, influencer meltdowns, and 3 love and hip-hop legends turning the dance floor into a full-blown battlefield. Kirk Frost and young Jock didn't walk into that club looking for vibes, they came strapped with grudges, side-eyes, and receipts. And guess who they zeroed in on? That's right, Mr. Prince of the South himself, Lil Scrappy. Now ask yourself this. What would push 2 grown men, decked out in designer drip, to square up in front of Atlanta's elite like it was the Bet Source Awards all over again? Was it betrayal? Was it business? Or was it one too many subtweets finally boiling over? Whatever it was, the moment the music dropped and Scrappy turned around, it was on. Phones went up, security froze, and now, the whole internet's in flames. So buckle up. Because what we're about to break down isn't just petty drama, it's scandal with stilettos, secrets, and a whole lot of spilled liquor. Atlanta has always been the playground where hip-hop royalty pretends to play nice while plotting each other's downfall behind tinted shades and overpriced hookah smoke. But last night, the city's glitzy nightclub turned into a battleground that no amount of velvet rope or security detail could contain. Picture this. The bass is hitting like a sledgehammer to the chest. Designer heels clacking on marble floors. Influencers live streaming themselves from bottle service while pretending they don't see the chaos brewing across the room. And then in walks Kirk Frost and young Jock, not with a vibe, but with a vendetta. They weren't there to party. They weren't there to sip anything. They were there with one thing in mind, Lil Scrappy. The man, the myth, the magnet for mess. Scrappy was already in his zone, surrounded by his people. Draped in confidence and cologne. Doing what he does best, toning the room. But somewhere in the shadows of flashing lights and overpoured cocktails, Kirk and Jock locked eyes with him, and the temperature in the club dropped by 10 degrees. This wasn't a random link-up, this was a plotted arrival. You could feel it, in the air-sharp stares, stiff postures, and a tension so thick you'd think somebody forgot to pay the AC bill. And here's where things got twisted. These 3 have history. The kind of history that doesn't make it to Instagram stories, but lives in DMIs, backstage whispers, and side-eyes at every industry event. Kirk, the so-called businessman with more scandals than business licenses. Jock, the walking contradiction, comic relief on TV but petty royalty behind the scenes. And Scrappy, the forever underdog with a bark that's always 1 second from turning into a bite. So what set this night off? Sources say there's been quiet talk for weeks, something about Scrappy running his mouth in places he shouldn't. Dropping names in interviews. Allegedly leaking old group chat receipts where Kirk and Jock got caught bad-mouthing some powerful people. But of course, Scrappy denied it. Claimed he don't do the messy. But the whispers grew louder, and then came the posts. Subtweets, story screenshots, cryptic lyrics in unreleased tracks. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Kirk and Jock had had enough. And when they saw Scrappy posted up like he owned the club, that was it. They moved. No warning. No theatrics. Just cold eyes and locked jaws cutting through the crowd straight toward Scrappy's section. People noticed immediately. Phones went up. Music kept blasting, but no one was dancing. Even the DJ looked like he was ready to press pause. Scrappy saw them coming, and to his credit, he didn't flinch. He stood up slowly, adjusted his chain, and waited. And then it started. Kirk, calm but cold, leaned in and said something that didn't need to be heard. By the crowd, it was the way he said it that shook the room. Scrappy's expression shifted. The smile faded. His posture stiffened. Jock stepped in right after, saying something sharper, more direct. And suddenly the energy wasn't tense, it was dangerous. The people around them could feel it. Scrappy's crew stood up behind him, not saying a word, but their movements said everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a confrontation, planned and delivered with precision. Security started moving in slow, like they didn't really want to get involved unless they had to, and honestly, who could blame them? You've got 3 reality TV veterans with reputations for making headlines, all standing within arm's reach, and none of them are backing down. Scrappy said something then too quiet to hear, but whatever, it was made. Jock cracked his neck like he was prepping for a different kind of scene. And then Kirk did the unthinkable. He pulled out his phone, held up the screen to Scrappy, and gave him that smug nod like, you know what this is. Scrappy looked. His eyes narrowed. His crew stepped in tighter. The moment was so thick with silence, You could almost hear the scrolling on Kirk's phone. Whatever he showed him, messages, photos, maybe even voice notes, it hit Scrappy hard. He tried to laugh it off, wave his hand, dismiss it like it was fake, taken out of context, manipulated, but his voice wasn't as steady anymore. His body language didn't match the words coming out of his mouth. You could see the shift. That unshakable Scrappy confidence started to crack just a little, and that's when Jock delivered the line. That's probably already a meme. Keep talking and watch what happens next. But before anything could actually happen next, a massive hand landed on Kirk's shoulder. Security. And this wasn't the kind of security that checks wristbands and flirts with bottle girls. This was the kind with a law enforcement background, and a don't make me repeat myself energy. He told them to take it outside or take a seat. His voice didn't rise, but the weight of it dropped the temperature another few degrees. Kirk didn't move at first, and Jock looked ready to go for round two, but eventually they backed off. Kirk slid his phone back into his pocket with a look that screamed, "This ain't over." And Jock gave Scrappy one last stare down before turning back toward their booth. Scrappy stood there, still holding his drink, heart probably pounding but face unreadable. One of his boys asked if he was good, and Scrappy just nodded, took a sip, and muttered, "They're all talk." But nobody believed that. Not him, not his crew, and definitely not the people recording from 5 feet away. Because that wasn't a war that ended, it was a war that just started. And while the club tried to go back to business as usual, with the music getting louder and the lights getting flashier, the energy never fully recovered. People kept whispering. The staff looked nervous. Even the bartenders kept glancing at VIP like they were expecting round two. And maybe they were, because if you looked closely at Kirk and Jock back in their booth, they weren't partying. They weren't drinking. They were watching, plotting, silent, focused, and on the other side of the club, Scrappy wasn't dancing anymore. He was sitting, low in his seat, lips tight, glass swirling in his hand. Eyes fixed straight ahead like he was preparing for something nobody else could see. The whole night shifted because of those three, and anyone who says it was just another club night either wasn't there or wasn't paying attention, because this wasn't just a clash. This wasn't just egos. This was personal. And it was far from over. Far from over. The music was still playing, but let's be real, nobody was paying attention to the playlist anymore. The DJ could have dropped the national anthem, and nobody would have noticed because every pair of eyes in that club was bouncing between Kirk, Jock, and Scrappy, like it was a live season finale, and the next episode hadn't even been filmed yet. But what made things worse or better, depending on how messy you like your tea, was that by the time Kirk and Jock returned to their section, the footage was already live. That's right, somebody had caught the entire confrontation on video, shaky iPhone angles and all, and had it uploaded to socials within minutes. No filter, no editing, just raw tension and receipts on full display. And the internet. Oh, it did what it always does. It exploded. Twitter turned into a courtroom. Instagram turned into a war zone. TikTok. Please, those kids were already lip-syncing the quotes and acting out the confrontation like it was Shakespeare. #Clubgate was trending. Fans were already split. Team Scrappy swore he held his own, and called Kirk and Jock washed-up has-beens with too much money and not enough clout. Team Kirk and Jock clapped back, saying Scrappy was lucky security stepped in before his wig got snatched. Meanwhile, inside the club, Scrappy was glued to his phone, scrolling through comments with that tight smile people wear when they're trying to act unbothered while they're literally being roasted alive. His boys were still hyping him up, calling him a legend, but Scrappy wasn't buying it. He knew exactly what that phone meant. The moment that footage dropped, this situation wasn't just between three men anymore. It was public. It was viral. It was evidence. And Kirk. Kirk was watching too, sitting in the corner of the VIP booth like a mob boss in a Lifetime movie, scrolling through every post, every reaction, expression.com. But that jaw locked tight. Jock leaned in, muttering something low, and Kirk just nodded once. No words needed. They knew this was about to get strategic, because while Scrappy was focused on defending his pride online, Kirk and Jock were already planning their next move, and that's when things got even darker. See, what most people didn't realize was that Kirk didn't just flash a phone earlier for show. According to an anonymous source who may or may not be the club's assistant manager who overheard everything while pretending to refill the VIP ice bucket, Kirk has real receipts. We're talking screenshots, voice notes, possibly even surveillance footage. The kind of stuff that doesn't just ruin a reputation, it burns it to the ground and salts the ashes. Allegedly, those messages Scrappy claimed were fake. They include some extremely sensitive info about people in the industry who do not play about their business being exposed. Names that don't appear on flyers but pull the strings behind closed doors. Kirk reportedly had voice notes of Scrappy mocking deals, clowning reality show producers, even talking slick about people who were once in his own circle. Jock, on the other hand, had texts time-stamped, geotagged, laced with emojis, and straight lies. One source claims there's a full screenshot of Scrappy messaging a mutual friend, saying Kirk was nothing but an old man clinging to storylines, and Jock only relevant because he has more hairstyles than hits. Harsh, maybe. True, doesn't matter. Because now it's out there, and Kirk and Jock were ready to use it all. Meanwhile, back at Scrappy's table, the mood was starting to rot. His crew, once loud and rowdy, was quieter now. They weren't sure if they were riding with a king or backing a man about to get dragged through the digital mud. Scrappy tried to play it cool, but the more footage surfaced, the more his credibility cracked. And if that wasn't enough, a new video leaked short, blurry, obviously filmed from a booth in the shadows. But in it, you can hear someone allegedly Scrappy saying, "I ain't worried about them dudes. They just mad 'cause I ain't. Kiss the ring." The internet took that and ran with it like it was gospel. Within 30 minutes, it was remixed into a diss track preview, posted on meme pages, and turned into merch. But here's the catch. As much as Scrappy was trending, he wasn't winning. The court of public opinion had shifted. People started calling for the receipts, Kirk mentioned. Comments flooded with "drop the screenshots and we want the voice notes." Jock never one to miss a clout opportunity, liked a few posts, followed a gossip blog, and dropped a cryptic tweet, "Ain't no loyalty in the jungle." That was all it took. Fans started connecting dots that didn't exist. Who was the snake? Who was the jungle? Who leaked what? Nobody knew, but everyone had an opinion. And that's when things started spilling into the real world. Industry insiders began distancing themselves from Scrappy. A scheduled podcast appearance was suddenly rescheduled. A rumored brand deal got quietly dissolved. Word on the street, nobody wants their name attached to a potential scandal when Kirk and Jock are allegedly sitting on digital TNT. Meanwhile, Kirk was still calm, calculated. Even when approached by a few overeager partygoers asking if the fight was staged, he gave them nothing but a cool nod and a slow sip from his glass. But don't let the chill fool you. Sources say Kirk has been waiting for this moment for months. Ever since Scrappy started stepping on toes and whispering in ears, Kirk had been building a case. Patient, silent, watching, and now the check was in motion. And Jock, ever the entertainer, wasn't far behind. Behind the scenes, he'd already started teasing something major. Allegedly, he'd reached out to a media contact with what he called career-ending receipts. Not just for Scrappy, but for others too. Apparently, Scrappy had been keeping notes on people notes that were now possibly in the hands of the very men he tried to come for. How, no one knows. But the club incident wasn't just a beef, it was the fuse. And now the whole scene was one spark away from blowing sky. The fans weren't just watching anymore. They were instigating, digging, demanding receipts, tagging blogs, diming cast members, and Scrappy. Scrappy was slipping. He tried to post a calm selfie, captioned "unbothered vibes only," but even his own comments turned against him. People weren't buying the smile. They wanted the truth. Or at least, the drama. And what nobody realized yet, what only Kirk, Jock, and maybe a few select insiders knew, was that the confrontation in that nightclub wasn't the climax. It was the setup, the preview, the appetizer. Because if the whispers are true, what's coming next isn't a post. It's not a video. It's not even a tweet. It's something else. Something with real consequences. Something Scrappy might not be ready for. Because if this was just the beginning, and it already had the whole city buzzing, what happens when the actual dirt comes out? The tension outside the club was even thicker than what had gone down inside. People weren't leaving, they were loitering like it was the red carpet for a scandal, and everybody wanted front row seats. Folks stood near the valet, phones glued to their hands, rewatching the confrontation like it was a Marvel post-credit scene, debating every glance, every hand movement, every blink. And then Kirk and Jock emerged from the shadows of the entrance like a scene straight out of a gangster flick, silent, composed, not a single word exchanged, but their body language said everything. They weren't angry, they weren't rattled. They were satisfied. Like men who had just executed the first step of a much bigger plan. Scrappy, still seated inside, watched them through the glass, jaw clenched, fingers twitching around his drink, the tension eating away at the cool he was trying to fake. One of his boys leaned in, whispering something, but Scrappy didn't even respond. His eyes never left that door. He knew this wasn't done. He knew the real fight hadn't even started yet. What happened in the club was loud, sure, but it was also calculated. A warning shot. Kirk and Jock weren't trying to humiliate him publicly just for clout. They were planting seeds that would grow into chaos if he didn't play it exactly right. But the problem? Scrappy doesn't play nice. Never has. And now, word on the street is that he's already lining up a counterstrike. Not another face-to-face. Oh no. This time it's digital warfare. There are whispers that Scrappy's team is working overtime behind the scenes, collecting their own receipts, piecing together a timeline to flip the narrative back in his favor. Allegedly, there's footage of Kirk in a compromising situation from a different party last month, and Jock, let's just say someone claims they've got screenshots of conversations he'd rather keep in the drafts folder. If Scrappy drops those, it won't just be messy, it'll be nuclear. But here's the twist. While Scrappy was scrambling to salvage the damage, Kirk and Jock were 3 steps ahead. According to one source close to Jock, they already anticipated a retaliation and are ready to leak a full-blown compilation of behind-the-scenes dirt involving Scrappy and at least 2 major production companies, one of which supposedly dropped Scrappy from a potential spin-off due to questionable behavior. Now whether that's true or just smoke and mirrors, nobody knows. But what we do know is the city is talking loud, and not just fans, industry people, executives, brand reps, the kind of folks who normally stay silent in public but are now whispering in back offices, wondering if this fire is going to reach their door. Some are already pulling back, quietly ghosting future bookings. Scrappy's name was allegedly removed from a sponsorship flyer the morning after the incident. A small thing, maybe, but in this world, optics are everything. Meanwhile, Kirk is leaning into the chaos. He's been liking shady tweets. He posted a cryptic message on his story, just a black screen with a snake emoji and a clock. Jock went live, and when fans asked about the incident, all he did was laugh and say, "Receipts aged like wine." And that's when the real chaos began. Late that night, an anonymous Twitter account dropped a 30-second voice note allegedly of Scrappy talking trash about an executive tied to a show he was supposed to headline. The internet went feral. Bloggers jumped on it. TikTok detectives began dissecting the voice, the background noise, the cadence, trying to prove it was him. And even though Scrappy denied it with a flat-out "that ain't me," the damage was done. The doubt had been planted. Some fans stood by him, others flipped. But the worst part, people stopped talking about whether Kirk and Jock went too far. They started asking what else they were sitting on. The tide had turned. Kirk and Jock had turned a petty nightclub spat into a full-on PR nightmare for Scrappy, and they barely lifted a finger. But it didn't stop there. By the next day, gossip pages were flooded with anonymous tips, old screenshots, random blurry videos. Everyone wanted a piece of the scandal. Even people who had nothing to do with the situation suddenly remembered texts from 3 years ago. Scrappy was trending for all the wrong reasons. Not because he stood his ground, but because the ground beneath him was crumbling. Meanwhile, Kirk and Jock, silent, not a peep. They let the internet do the work. They knew better than to overplay the hand. And that's what's making this worse. The silence is loud, strategic, dangerous, because nobody knows what they're planning. Next, there are rumors that Kirk is sitting on a full folder of videos, some of which could get people dropped from contracts. There's talk that Jock has emails and phone logs that, if released, could connect Scrappy to even bigger drama involving 2 other cast members. And the fans are eating it up. Every day, a new theory, a new clip, a new anonymous leak. Scrappy, once the center of attention, is now surrounded by shadows. And maybe he knows it. Because his tone's changed. His interviews are shorter. His captions more filtered. The fire is still there, but the fear is creeping in. And honestly, can you blame him? Because when Kirk and Jock walked into that club, they didn't come to throw hands. They came to throw a match. And they've been watching it burn ever since. So now, the question isn't who won the fight. It's how far is this going to go? Is Scrappy going to take the bait and go scorched earth? Or is he going to let it die before his whole reputation goes up in flames? Either way, Kirk and Jock have already made their move. And they're not blinking. The game has changed. The players have leveled up. And what started as a stare down on a dance floor has turned into one of the most unpredictable power plays Atlanta nightlife has seen in years. But don't get comfortable, because sources say the next move is already in motion, and when it lands, it might just take this beef to a whole new level. So now that the smoke's still rising and the damage is done, what do you think? Was Kirk Frost just defending his name or masterminding a takedown like he's auditioning for a role on Power? Was young Jock really just backing up his boy? Or did he have a whole vault of receipts he's been dying to unleash? And let's talk about Scrappy. Was he caught off guard? Or is he playing a longer game behind the scenes, waiting to flip this whole scandal on its head? Because let's be honest, in the world of flashing lights, shaky iPhone footage, and whispered threats in VIP sections, nothing is ever as it seems. One minute it's a toast, the next it's a war zone. And if this was just the beginning, what's coming next might just break the internet. So don't just sit there like a background extra in this drama. Jump into the comments and tell us what side you're on. Team Kirk and Jock dropping truth bombs like it's Judgment Day? Or Team Scrappy holding his ground like the last man standing in a burning house? Spill your theories, tag your messy friend who always knows the inside scoop, and let's get this comment section hotter than that nightclub floor. And if you thought this was wild, just wait, because the next chapter, oh, it's coming. And when it drops, it's not going to be subtle. So hit that like button like you're throwing shade, smash subscribe so you don't miss a single explosive update, and turn on notifications, because around here, the drama doesn't sleep and neither do we. You've been warned. This story's far from over. The tea is piping, the receipts are loaded, and we're just getting started. Stay tuned, stay tuned.